Box Media, news and information for the soul. Please subscribe to Rainy Box Media, like and share your views in the comment section. Thank you. We are warriors. I am not surprised of the Supreme Court decision, but I don't think a lot of people are aware, outside of the Civil Rights Act of 1963, 64, and 65, and how Lyndon B. Johnson executed affirmative action, if you will, in 1965. When it came to college admission, it wasn't instituted till 2003 on a national level based on Grutter versus Bollinger at the Supreme Court level. In 2003 is when college admission could consider across the board, nationwide, the color and take that into account, the ethnic background of the particular individual. But these laws that were passed, we all know, were passed for African Americans primarily. Ultimately, when it comes to affirmative action, whether it be in college or whether it be at the job or whether it be to get a government contract, it primarily still benefited white women. I think in a way it's a good thing, primarily because it's going to increase the applicant pool of our HBCUs across the board. But I want you to hear what Howard University president said about that very issue in terms of being ready and prepared for the increase of applicants.
As a university president, how are colleges and universities going to rework their admissions policies to be in compliance with this ruling, but still be able to achieve the kind of diverse campus communities we need?
Yeah, it's actually going to be very difficult, because if you cannot use race, to have a student use an essay to explain, as Justice Roberts pointed out in his opinion, explain how race has impacted them, I actually think that in and of itself is discriminatory, because you're asking those students to defend the existence of racism that they have experienced when they should be talking about the excellence that they have achieved and aspirations that they have in coming to college. So you're actually, I think, putting an undue burden on those students. I think it's going to be very difficult. And I think every time that we come up with a methodology to do it, it will be challenged with a lawsuit. And I think that that's unfortunate.
The other issue is that they continue to use Asians to, and particularly the Asian population, in my opinion, Asian Americans, to counter the African Americans. And ultimately, when it comes to this type of decision, again, that started in 2003, not back in 1964 or something, it's not going to benefit them. Here's some information. When it comes to Harvard University, 43.2% are legacy students. That means they've got into Harvard just simply due to the fact that their parents went to Harvard. 20% are athletes that come from households that earn more than $500,000 a year. And 69% of athletes accepted were Caucasian. 43% of Caucasian applicants accepted were either athletes or legacy students, or the children of donors or faculty. 6% of the population is Black, and that's just at Harvard University alone. So let me just say this to you. They can continue to use the Asian community as a tool. I'm not sure why the Asian community wants to speak on other topics that relate to reparations, for example, for African Americans, but they need not do so. But take a listen in to what this particular gentleman that happens to be Asian has to say about what he perceives to be a victory.
Kenny, can I ask you though, I mean, colleges, obviously they care about grades and SAT scores, but they also are filling universities of people, human beings who have other factors that they bring to the table. Why is it not okay for them to consider those things?
I'm saying if you're going to consider those things, you should consider them without respect to race.
Sure.
So as you know, a lot of Asian Americans.
I think that that's exactly right. But socioeconomic status doesn't. If you take race out of it, let's call it socioeconomic status, where whether or not they grew up wealthy or poor, is that not something that colleges might have an interest in considering?
The reason why you shouldn't consider that is because you should consider the success of an applicant. Because of affirmative action, Black Americans graduate from law school at the bottom 25% of their classes, largely speaking. And we don't want that. We want Black students to succeed. We want every student to succeed, low-income students to succeed. But you have to put them in scenarios, in places where they're likely to succeed. And lowering your standard to admit somebody of a socioeconomic status or race would not help them do that. In fact, it would harm their graduation rate and excellence.
Well, as the case also points out, the standard isn't necessarily lowered because students are all admitted. The question is whether race can be an added consideration, a tipping point in some of these cases.
The standard is lowered. The standard is lowered. As the student admissions data shows, an Asian has to score 273 points higher on the SAT to have the same chance of admission as a Black person. So the standard is lowered for Black Americans.
Kenny Xu, thank you for your perspective. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Bottom line, we are the warrior class. African Americans are warriors. We are a resilient people. We withstood from chattel slavery to Jim Crow to everything in between. We continue to push back. We continue to rise up. We continue to move forward. And no matter what they attempt to do to us, we continue to fight and push back. No particular group other than African Americans have the right to speak on whether or not we should receive reparations. Obviously, this most recent decision with the Supreme Court justice as it relates to college students shows and demonstrates that we have a right to reparations now.